This is Glenda with aka GK Fralin, and tonight I'm going to continue with discussion on stroke. And if you look back through our history, you'll see that we do take on conditions like this every once in a while, and generally when someone that we know is affected or someone who has asked. So I have a background as a nurse. I haven't practiced for a while, but I do go to reliable sites to get my information. So I'm going to start off tonight with what is a stroke. And so we will get into stroke prevention at a later time because that is very important. Tonight, I'm just going to describe what a stroke is it's an interruption of blood flow to a portion of the brain that causes brain cells to die and can cause a loss of speech, memory, feeling, or motor control, or even death. The effects can be permanent or temporary, depending on the area of the stroke and the severity. Okay, that's just as it says. Okay. That is what a stroke is. Okay, there are a couple of types of strokes. The first one is hemorrhagic. And most of us, by the very name, can kind of get an idea of that being about blood. Of course, it's all about blood, but a hemorrhage is when something opens up, breaks open, and blood spills out. Exactly what this is. And this can be due to an aneurysm, which is a weakened area in a blood vessel. And it can break open. And then that will cause bleeding into the brain. Now, when there is bleeding into the brain and it's a significant amount, it causes pressure in the brain, and then that also causes pressure within that area of the brain, which causes brain cells to start dying, basically because of the pressure that is put on them. And it can ultimately damage cells. Okay. An ischemic attack, and this is the one that's most common, is when there is a blockage in a blood vessel, generally by a blood clot. And what happens with this is it cuts off the flow of blood to a certain or particular part of the brain. And when that blood supply is cut off, then that's called an ischemic or emia, if you may recognize as having to do with blood. Okay. So ischemic strokes are like I said, the most frequent. The biggest risk factor associated with the ischemic type of stroke, like I said, is blood pressure is an indicator, and then there's blood clot. Sometimes I believe constriction can also happen. Okay, the next one is a TIA, a transient ischemic attack. Transient meaning short-lived. And so the blood flow, transient ischemic attack, or a TIA. Now, this is when the blood flow to a part of the brain stops for a very short period of time. Okay, that's why it's called transient. It is fleeting. And it is often mistaken for a stroke. Now, that's not entirely a bad thing. It generally does not do any damage, but it can cause symptoms that can last up to 24 hours. And the TIA should be taken very seriously because it is often a warning of an impending stroke. In fact, I would say it's a possibility of a stroke might be coming right after the ischemic attack. So do go ahead and get to the emergency room or the doctor. You don't know if it's an ischemic attack or a transient attack or if it's a stroke. Your doctor will know that. Anyway, and it can help you to prevent something worse happening later on. Okay, now I'm going to go to their website, which it's the National Stroke Association, and it's very simply www.stroke.org. That should be fairly easy to remember. It's just simply www.stroke.org. Okay. And I found this one. There are other places that you can Google stroke and find all kinds of places that give information. This one I felt gave the most complete information as to what I was looking for. Okay, stroke facts and myths. This is where I'm going next. Okay, there are myths about stroke that even the medical field has had trouble overcoming, because there are some of them that we thought were real for a while. Not many, but maybe one or two. Okay, myth number 1. Stroke cannot be prevented. Yes, strokes can be prevented. So that is a myth. Myth number 2. There is no treatment for stroke. Yes, there is treatment for stroke. So that is a myth. Myth. Stroke only affects the elderly. That is myth. Stroke can affect you stroke can happen at any age. It's even been known to happen in infants. Okay, it's not common, thank goodness, but it has been known to happen. Myth. Stroke happens in the heart. No. A stroke happens in the brain. A heart attack happens in the heart. Myth. Stroke recovery only happens for the first few months after a stroke. That is false. And this is one that caught a lot of us off guard for a long time, because a lot of people bought into this, and it's not true. Stroke recovery is a lifetime. It's something that a person keeps recovering the rest of their life. Strokes are rare. No, they're not. That is a myth. Strokes are not rare. Strokes are not hereditary. Yes, they are hereditary. That is a myth. Strokes are hereditary. Doesn't mean that if there's family history that you will have a stroke, but you have a better chance of having a stroke than someone who does not have a family history. However, someone who does not have a family history does still need to have that checked out, or have their blood pressure taken, and take heed if they're having any kind of symptom, because it can still happen. Okay, family history begins somewhere. So anyway, another myth: if stroke symptoms go away, you don't have to see a doctor. Oh, please don't believe that one. Yes, even if the stroke symptoms go away, you still need to go see the doctor, because that's a warning. That's a warning. Okay, and I started saying myth before each one of those because I didn't want them getting mixed up. But yes, all of those are myths. And I'll run through them again real quick. Myth. Stroke cannot be prevented. Myth. There is no treatment for stroke. Myth. Stroke only affects the elderly. Myth. Stroke happens in the heart. Myth. Stroke recovery only happens the first few months after a stroke. No. That's myth. Myth. Strokes are rare. Myth. Strokes are not hereditary. They are. Myth. If stroke happens, symptoms go away, you don't need to see a doctor. That's a definite myth. Okay, facts. Fact 1. Up to 80% of strokes are preventable. Yes, and that is the good side of it. Up to 80%, think of that number, of strokes are preventable. Fact, at any sign of stroke, call 911 immediately. Treatment may be available. Now, you don't know if it's a TIA, you don't know if it's a mini stroke, you don't know if it's a stroke. You've got a symptom, you call 911, you get there. That's my order. Fact, stroke can happen to anyone at any time. Yes. Fact, stroke is a brain attack. A brain attack. Fact, stroke recovery is a lifelong process. You don't stop recovering because you've gone a certain amount of time. You keep recovering. You keep working on your therapies. And yes, it's a lifelong process. Fact, there are nearly 7 million stroke survivors in the United States. That's just in the U.S. Stroke is the 5th leading cause of death in the United States. That's all death from anything. It's the 5th leading cause. So you put those two numbers together, that's a lot of strokes, but there's still a bigger chance of survival with the right treatment. Fact, family history of stroke increases your chance of stroke, and it does. So that's, it's like a woman having a history of breast cancer in her family. Yeah, you've got a better chance. So you want to make sure that you get your checkups frequently. So, yeah, family history does increase your chances. It's not a life sentence. It is not a death sentence. It does not mean you are going to have a stroke. It means you have an increased chance. Temporary stroke symptoms are called transient ischemic attacks. This is another fact. They are warning signs prior to actual stroke and need to be taken seriously. This is why I said earlier, when it says at any sign of a stroke, and this was from them, at any sign, call 911 immediately, treatment may be available. I restated that one because it is important. Okay, and that is where I've been trying to get to all evening, and thank goodness I did it in less time. I've had 2 other attempts tonight, and I just went off the gauge. I don't know why. So, take a deep breath and try to relax. That's going to be that's good for you anyway. And it does help to bring down the blood pressure. From a mom, give somebody a hug. A real hug, because it's good for you. And it's the end of the day. And I think it's good to have a hug at the end of the day. For Pete's sake, go get one. Or give yourself one if you have to. Snuggle up with a Tweety. See, I got a canary. I can snuggle with a canary. I can be a little silly now. It's the end of a day. It's the end of this session. I want you to take it seriously, but breathe. Yes, you can see that's very important. Positive attitude, people. Positive attitude. Tomorrow's another day, and we're going to be here another day. So I'll see you then. Good night.